Hi, welcome back to my channel, CappaTime. Where we left off, we were discussing the third law of On. What the zodiac means, it's the life cycle of one individual from birth to death. Of significance was the fact that it proves or tells us its reincarnation. And since the other laws are true, this must be true as well. And as I mentioned before, maybe at an inappropriate time, but at this time it's appropriate to mention that trans and gay and so on and so forth are proof of reincarnation. Imagine if you came here 40, 50, 60 times as a boy. You got this boy thing down, right? You got this boy thing down. But this time you wake up and you go, whoa, what happened? Where's my body parts? I'm missing something. Something's wrong. I know I'm a boy. What do you mean I got girl parts? What? So now you understand we're in a transitional period, and that's because in the age of Aquarius, the age of the rainbow, you can no longer control what you come back as. So, but there's proof of the reincarnation. But now let's go on to the second part. The Babylonian clay tablets tell us that as above, so below applies to the zodiac. So if the zodiac is the story of one individual, it must, by definition, also be the story of the entire human race. The entire human race must grow in the same stages as one individual, in the same order. But where an individual goes Fibonacci, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, etc., the human race, and thanks to Hipparchus and Plato, as I mentioned earlier, show us is 2160 years. And that's how I derived the year. Because according to the Gnostics, 148 BCE was the beginning of the age of Pisces. That would end it 12, 21, 12. No surprise, right? No surprise. And that's how you can measure. And then go back 2160 years times 11. You go back to the age of Capricorn, the first stage, and it tells you 21,748 specifically. Not maybe, not if, not a. 21,748 was year one. And that makes this year 23,771, and as of March 21st of 2024, the real year will be 23,772. I wish it was more fancy than that, but this is what it is. And it's exact and it's precise because the zodiac's a clock. But now let's go into that bigger picture. So what does the zodiac tell us? And what I discovered was the following. You use the same words to describe the small and the large. Not surprising, but makes sense, doesn't it? So, when we look at Capricorn for the newborn at age 0, what is it? The intelligent mammal which navigated or survived the waters of life. Well, what is Capricorn for the whole of humanity? The intelligent creatures which navigated / survived the waters of life. If you look at the climatological records at 22,000 BCE, the worst part of the Ice Age came to an abrupt end. For some reason, the temperature rose something like 3 degrees in 400 years, or 4 degrees in 300 years, or something like that. So by 21,700, right, this is what I'm telling you, the beginning of humanity, the temperature had risen globally like 3 degrees. It became safe to come out of our cave cities. And that's where we lost our pigment and gained consciousness, was eating magic mushrooms in cave cities for 60,000 years. That's where whites come from, the Caucasus Mountains, which is why we're called Caucasians. And we got the jump on everybody else because of the magic mushrooms. Okay? That's all. That's the claim to fame. And that's all there is to it. But anyway, when you go back and measure it out, we survived the Ice Age. So we navigated the waters of life. We survived it. We started coming out and making cave cities. And there's proof in the Errata civilization that lived back 22,000 BCE in cave cities in the Caucasus Mountains in Ukraine. And they had pacts with other cave cities for mutual protection in case of attack. They had rules. Who guards the door? Who watches the fire? Where can you go to the bath? They had all sorts of rules, agreed upon rules. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people living in cave cities on agreed upon rules. This is where civilization got started. When we came out, we now merged with other cave cities building above the land, and we got to have agreed upon rules, right? You build a latrine downwind, right? There's agreed upon rules. Am I wrong? And then it tells us around, and I should go the act years for you, but it just gets too tedious. But the next age would have been Sagittarius, around 19,500. And that's the age where we became the master hunter. We practiced our hunting skills. We not only became good foragers outside, right, nuts, berries, and fish, but we also started hunting, and that required cooperation and the sharing of spoils. and multiple people carrying nets and chasing down herds and all sorts of stuff like that. Cooperation between lots of people. And what do you need in order to hunt? Right? You need to be able to communicate. So Ophiuchus, the guy who mastered his tongue, comes right after, somewhere around 19,000 BCE. We mastered common language, and it most likely was hand signals, right? And we still use them today. Come, stay. Am I wrong? The same signals to this day. Okay? So language was found in the age of Ophiuchus around 19,000. Well, around 17,000, guess what I discover? It's the age of Scorpio. Why Scorpio? I look at the climatological records, and guess what happened? It stopped raining for like 1,000 years. And all of the area, which we now call the Silk Road and Azerbaijan and all those places, they're all desert now in the Middle East, were all fertile back then. But they all started to go desert then. That's why humanity still lives there. It's our natural land that we've been on since forever, and we're not leaving, right? So, but that's why they're living in desert, because it was fertile land once upon a time, and it started drying up in the age of Scorpio. And we have a remnant from each age. I mentioned to you before, from the age of Capricorn, we have the thing of calling baby goats and baby children, humans, kids, descendants of Cain. And from the age of Sagittarius, we have the hunter, the bow and arrow. And from the age of Ophiuchus, we have the thing is the snake is the tongue. And from the age of Scorpio, we have the scorpion to represent the desert. Well, because of the desert, everybody moved to the freshwater place, and the center of civilization was twofold. It was the Black Lake, stretching all the way down to the Fertile Crescent. There was the center of civilization. And that goes back around then. But now we became sedentary, living by the freshwater source. No choice. You can't go 1,000 miles in that direction into the desert. There's no water. You die. So you had to go to the freshwater. So as we're living sedentary, we started trade, accounting, and commerce. Libra the scales. Around 15,000 BCE, we started trade amongst ourselves. We had specialty of labor. But think about it. Not everybody got the same amount of rich. I make belts. I can make a living maybe. What? That other family owns the mines and the water, and they can hire people to protect them? They got rich and powerful. So the beginning of society, and the next stage is Virgo the Virgin. Around 13,000, we created society. And we still have society to this day. And we started chasing stars way back then, because reincarnation was believed to be true. But if you were made such a positive impact on society, instead of reincarnating, you would become your own star. And that's why they say people who are making a positive impact on society are headed for stardom. That started all the way back when society started. Well, as a result of the unequal distribution of wealth, we had the rich and powerful, and we had the weak and meek. Okay? And from there, we go into the next stage, and that's the age of Leo the Lion. Now, that's the age, if the individual of your hair grows out, you can tell you about your mane, and so on and so forth. And what does it tell us? It tells us that in the age of Leo the Lion, our sun, just like the same words, remember we used the same words, that which navigated the waters of life, right? That which practices its hunting skills, that which walks and speaks, right? We pass the same ones over and over. That which measures, that's what strikes out an attack. That which starts society, or introduces society. The next one was Leo the Lion. For the 8-year-old, your son roared like a lion. Well, guess what? We find from the climatological records, our son did roar like a lion. We had an apocalypse. Somewhere around the area, and I'm pretty sure I know the exact date, but I can't prove it, 10,948 BCE our time, in the year 10,800 their time. In a sacred year, because 1 and 8 is 9, and 9 is God. In a year when we were celebrating God, an apocalypse hit us. What happened? Well, on October 31st of that year, yes, October 31st, that's why Halloween, the hallowed evening, is memorialized on October 31st, because the calendar's always been the same. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. And on October 31st, we are in the middle of the Enki comet debris field. Every year, from September to November, we're right in the middle of that debris field, but we're fairly safe now. There's no earth killers in the region that we pass through. But one year, And the year we were celebrating God, in a godly year, 10,800 their time, on October 31st, we were visited by 7 comets. And the book of Revelation tells us there were 7. And it tells us what each of the 7 did. Because it's not a story of the end times to come, it's all past tense. Read the book of Revelation. He took magic mushrooms and dreamt about what he read. And this is what he dreamt. That's the book of Revelations. So now you understand the graphics. And it tells you the first one blew up over Siberia, right near Moscow. And 11 hours later, the 7th blew up over what we now call the Scablands. That was the Earth Killer. And it tells you what each of the 7 did. And if you think I'm wrong, go back to the Mahabharata, which is a lyric Vedic tale of our history. And it says somewhere in our ancient past, not once upon a time, but somewhere in our ancient past, 2 gods had a war in the sky and they threw fireballs at each other. And 7 torches filled the earth. The last one caused 1,200 years of winter. Gee, remember the Younger Dryas you were talking about earlier? Well, that's the same comet apocalypse we're talking about now. The first one blew up in the sky. And it was at night. Remember, it was going towards night. The sky was as black as night, and the sky was on fire. The sky was black and orange. That's why the colors of the hallowed evening are black and orange. The sky was on fire during the apocalypse. And the apocalypse happened. Sodom and Gomorrah was for real, but not because we were prideful and got through. Prideful tells us the age of Leo. That's what we were prideful, and I'll explain to you why we were prideful. We were building megaliths all over the world to withstand the test of time. We were building megaliths everywhere, even in Antarctica, and we found some under the ice. They're buried. You'll explain all that later when we get there. But the apocalypse happened, and it happened over an 11-hour period. A 12-hour period, excuse me. It was exactly a 12-hour period, a godly period of time, because 1 and 2 is creation. So again, they thought God did it. That's why we think God threw fireballs at us, because it happened on a sacred math year. But what happened was, and the book of Revelation tells us, the first one blew up in the air, the second one hit the ocean and caused a global tidal wave. The third one left a hole in the ground, and there is one in Greenland, a hole in the ground, the size of New Jersey. So it went through a 2-mile ice sheet and burned a hole, dug a hole in the ground. That's the third one. The fourth one blackened the sky such that the day was only a third as bright as it should be. So it was like a dusk in the middle of the day. And then came comets 5 and 6, were the woes of man, according to the book of Revelation. The first one describes 100,000 black stallions with fire coming out of their nostrils, and a cloud of smoke behind them, racing at you at breakneck, unimaginable speeds, devouring everything in its path. What they're describing is a pyroclastic flow, a black cloud with bits of orange, like orange flame, coming at you at 700 miles an hour. And the pyroclastic flow happened. So that's the fifth one. And then the sixth one was pools of hot poisonous gas reduced whole forests to nubs, like a plague of locusts. And that's what it describes. Locusts destroyed everything. Plagues of hot poisonous gas reduced whole fields to nothing left, whole cities to nothing left. And then came the 7th comet, and guess what that was? God's kingdom come. God's kingdom come. End of sentence, end of chapter, end of verse, end of book. The Mahabharata says the 7th one caused 1,200 years of winter. Darkness and 1,200 years of winter. Well, we now know the Younger Dryas. There was a period of darkness and 1,200 years of winter. And that's what happened in the age of Leo the Lion. And I mentioned before because we were building megaliths. The megaliths we find all over the world that we can't replicate today, which are almost every one we find, and all the buried ones, were built before the comet apocalypse. After the comet apocalypse, there was a second apocalypse 1,200 years later. There was a global tidal wave. Something hit the Greenland ice sheet. It caused 30 days or 40 days of rain, and the skies darkened because of all the steam in the sky. And it sent a tidal wave which buried Antarctica. Antarctica is Atlantis, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody goes, Atlantis is right outside of the Rock of Gibraltar. No, it's not. Nothing says that. Some idiot said that. It's outside the gates of Gibraltar, what we now call Antarctica. And there's pyramids with all the technology we're finding today are in those pyramids. Perfectly frozen intact. from the tidal wave that sunk Atlantis permanently under the ice. And that happened in 9600, also in the age of Leo. So two solar events in the age of Leo. Our sun roared like a lion, just like we say for the 8-year-old child, our sun roared like a lion. Well, next comes the age of Cancer the crab. Beware the dangers working in the waters. During that age, the sea levels rose 400 feet. Half of the land that humans used to live on and have temples and cities are now permanently under the water. You'll walk to the island of Sicily. You could probably walk to Africa through Italy. You get it? You could walk to England from France. But then they all got filled up. And waterborne disease became an issue. And we had that global tidal wave. We had another tidal wave. When? In the year 7700 BCE. Go check the records for yourself. The Mediterranean Sea had now risen 400 feet or 300 something feet. You can go check. They can tell you the timing in themselves. But during the age of Cancer the crab, the waters rose 300 to 400 feet, and the Mediterranean spilled into the Black Lake. Remember I told you the center of civilization was the Black Lake? Well, there's your deluge. There's your Noah's Ark flood, ladies and gentlemen. The below sea level Black Lake was buried by the Mediterranean Sea pouring into it through the Bosphorus Straits, what we now call the Bosphorus Straits. Carved a hole right in, and they think it was some kind of natural disaster, like an earthquake where magma got into the chamber and exploded, opened a hole, and that's how the water started in. But either way, it is estimated that it was a 35-foot high wall of water that went 350 miles past, the 350 kilometers past the old lake shoreline. All the way to Mount Ararat. That's how far Mount Ararat is from the old lake shoreline. And that Black Lake became, which was the size of New Jersey, big lake, it now became the Black Sea, the size of Florida. Now, there was a separate flood there around 3000, 2400 BCE, where the whole lake, because the sea shouldn't have been there, it displaced the ground underneath it, and the whole north side of the sea went underwater, and we could find Bronze Age palaces with woolly mammoth tools. Not the woolly mammoth lived in them, they were artifacts from when the old lake, they were still using woolly mammoth tools at the old lake shoreline. Tells you when it happened. When woolly mammoths went extinct in 8000 BCE. How old were these tools? 7700 BCE. So they were like relics. They were found items. And that's why you found them in palaces. They were collector's items, just like we would find a Revolutionary War rifle or a gun or something right now, right? So, but there was flooding in the age of Cancer the crab. And in fact, it was so deadly for mankind that that's why our most horrible disease, cancer, is named after it. Now do you understand? And there's your remnant from the age of Cancer. So in the age of Leo, you have pictures of the sun with a smiley face, with a lion snout. From the age of Cancer, we have the crab, and the disease called crab. Sorry, disease called cancer. And then next came the age of Gemini, the merging. The old ways and the new ways. The Anunnaki, the original survivors, plus the new indigenous people. And that was the merging. That's where the idea of good and bad, good and evil came from. And how did we describe things in opposites? That became commonplace then. Tall, short, thin, fat, right? It all came from that age, Gemini. But also came the concept of good and evil. And it spread that those who caused the apocalypse, those who were prideful in the age of Leo, all that stuff was buried. The pyramids were buried, they were ransacked, all the metal was taken off, the caps were taken off because they were in the front of God. But they couldn't bury the ones in Giza because the sand does what it wants to do. But that used to be fertile once upon a time. After the apocalypse, it all dried up. Sahara only formed after the apocalypse. Now, you think that tidal wave that buried Antarctica, in case you think I'm kidding, you can go into Morocco, which is in the northwest corner of Africa. If the wave was coming south and it was big, like I told you, there would be a sand trail of how far the wave got up to the top of the Atlas Mountains, how far it could reach, and before it would leave a rain of sand, what they call a chevron. Well, the chevron's a ripple of sand that a wave leaves, and you see them all the time at the shore. And you can do a mathematical formula from how big the chevron is to how big the wave was, how far it traveled, and all that nonsense. Well, the chevrons at the Atlas Mountains in Morocco are 6 to 20 feet tall. That means the wave, when it hit Morocco, was 800 feet tall, and the wave was probably 1,600 to 2,000 feet tall when it washed over Antarctica. That's why it completely washed over the continent, and that's why it froze. Ancient maps show green. But now you know these events happen. And then, so we had the idea of good and bad now. And that brings us to the age of Taurus the bull. I'm going to go right through it even if I go over. In the age of Taurus the bull, we had enforced religious practice. You had the bullhorn, bossing people around. We still use the bullhorn to boss people around, right? Clear the streets, clear the streets. We used the bullhorn. It was an automatic call to prayer. You heard it, you better come a running, or your own neighbors might punch you out. Now, they had several weird cultures in the West. Remember, they thought God had threw fireballs at us, and we better do all this weird stuff, or else he'll do it again. And so that's why we have the worship and fear and all the rules that we have, all the commandments and all that. Not the 10, but the rules thereafter, the laws of God, so to speak, in the Talmud and whatever have you. And I don't agree with them necessarily, but I defend their right to believe it. But what the point being that you had the order we know from the Bible of killing your firstborn. And that's where Abraham, right, son of God, says, I don't have to do like you do. And that's the beginning of the Jewish people. They refused to eat their ham and had it literally shoved down their throats in the age of Taurus the bull. And that's why they celebrate on the Saturday, not Sunday. They celebrate on Saturn's Day, and that's why they base their calendar on the moon. They had ham shoved down their throats, and they moved away and formed their own people, and there you go. And there's your story of the Jewish people, right? And traveling to the desert to where they got to get to. And Moses is a triumph of the age of Aries the ram over Taurus the bull. The laws of the age of Aries. Remember, for the human being, sorry about that, for the human being, sorry about that. Dogs get excited. My son is home. But for the human being, the age of Aries the ram is negotiating with toddlers. So now we have a new idea of God. God is not something to fear, like the bullhorn, like the Minotaur. Fear God, the bull. Now God was more like a shepherd. And now you have your Aries the ram religions, including Dionysus. In the age of Taurus the bull, you had Tammuz as the son of God. And if you didn't eat your ham on Easter Sunday, he would jam it down your throat. In the age of Aries the ram, you had Dionysus and Horus and Mithra. You had same versions of son of God, but a different idea. Voluntary religion. And that's the ram's horn for the Jews. So that's the age of Aries the ram. I'm sorry for that. In the age of... hold on, please. I'm doing taping here. Quiet. With that, I'll end the episode. We'll continue another time. All right, thanks. Talk to you later. Sorry for the noise. Bye.